Numbers updated during just the last hour. The Lebanese government now says that at least 492 people have been killed, including 35 children, and more than 1,600 people injured by Israeli airstrikes today in Lebanon, by far the largest attack on Lebanon since the war between Israel and Lebanon in 2006. The Israelis are targeting, they say, the Iran-backed Hezbollah militia, which the U.S. and other Western nations designate as a terrorist organization. Hezbollah fighters have been steadily firing rockets into Israel since October 7th, forcing more than 60,000 Israelis from their homes. We are joined now by former U.S. Defense Secretary and CIA Director Leon Panetta. Thank you so much for joining us, Secretary Panetta. This latest escalation of Israeli attacks on Hezbollah on Lebanon comes a day before President Biden is set to speak before the United Nations General Assembly. What do you think he should say in that address? Is there anything you think he could say that might revive negotiations to end the fighting among Israel, Hamas, and Hezbollah?
Well, there's no question that the United Nations is going to be talking an awful lot about the war that's taking place now between Israel and Hezbollah and the fact that it's become a wider war. And I assume that the president will, in his remarks, have to address that. And again, have to urge that the parties try to strive towards some kind of ceasefire in order to be able to provide for the hostage exchange, provide for a path as to what happens with Gaza and the Palestinians, what happens with humanitarian aid. I think those arguments need to be made, and President Biden is the person to try to make those arguments. He's been urging a ceasefire. I think he's got to continue to do that.
Both Hamas and Hezbollah are obviously supported by Iran, which is issuing its own threats after today's attacks by Israel. Do you think any solution is possible with Iran there, since Iran really seems to be at the heart of the problem, funding all of these proxy groups, not just Hamas and Hezbollah, but the Houthis and these militias in Syria and Iraq and more?
Well, Iran has always been at the heart of the problem because they have, in fact, been supplying these proxy forces that do their dirty work. And they've been doing it for a long time. And Iran has stated very clearly that they're going to continue to support Hezbollah. Whether or not there's an opportunity with the new president in Iran to try to see whether at least you can begin some kind of dialogue, I don't know, but that's probably worth an effort. But I think right now, to be truthful, we've crossed a threshold here, Jake, between a war that tries to apply some restraint and a wider war. We're clearly walking into a much wider war, and that makes it much more difficult for any of the parties to agree to any kind of solution.
Does Israel, in your view, have the military capacity to fight Hezbollah and Hamas, two fronts at the same time?
Well, there's no question that it strains their capabilities. They've now had to move, obviously, some forces out of Gaza towards the north, and they're focusing pretty much on the war with Lebanon. They obviously are getting supplies from the United States. They're obviously trying to redirect some of their resources towards the north. But there's no question that the longer this goes on, the more pressure it's going to put on their capability to continue to be able to fight this war.
Can the U.S. keep supplying Israel with the weapons Israel wants if this war expands and the civilian death toll continues?
Well, I think the United States has to make clear what the constraints are here. Obviously, the United States is going to continue to provide those supplies as we have because of our bond with Israel. But at the same time, I do think that it's important to make clear that we cannot have an all-out war in the Middle East right now. This is the wrong time. The wrong place, and frankly, everybody's going to pay a price that I think will be devastating in terms of the future. I think those are the points that the United States has to make to Israel and try to keep pushing the parties to try to move in the direction of some kind of ceasefire. The problem to be frank, Jake, is that if you look at the past wars in the Middle East, both parties have to kind of exhaust themselves before they're going to be prepared to talk about any kind of resolution. And that may be the case here.